Why do pet foods cost differently? Aren't they the same? Does it really matter? And the answer is, they're not all the same. If people think about walking through the aisles of a pet store, especially if they have a lot of foods, has everybody heard of like the brand Blue Buffalo dog food? Okay. That is a very, very high quality food. It's made mostly with, very organically grown or organically fed chicken meats and things like that. They use very wholesome products. They don't use byproducts in their meals. It's sometimes what we call limited ingredient diet. So it's just kind of like the meats, the grains, things like that. And then you go down to, have people heard of the brand Old Roy that you can get like in Walmart and stuff like that? More of like the supermarket brands. Is that as high quality a food as a Blue Buffalo? Probably not. However, if you look at the cost difference between the two, Old Roy is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than Blue Buffalo is. And Blue Buffalo is a higher quality food. It's going to cost more. But that doesn't necessarily mean that both of them are not nutritionally balanced. So long as they have that AAFCO statement on them, and you'll see it put on the front of the bag or down on that ingredients list that I showed you over here, it might say, approved by AAFCO. That means that that diet is nutritionally balanced. There may be not as high quality ingredients in there, so like an Old Roy may be more likely to lead to maybe some obesity issues or something like that. And I'm using Old Roy as an example. I mean, a lot of this, you could have like supermarket brand stuff too. It's just Old Roy is the one that vets always harp on. They may not be, in other words, the same amount of Old Roy as compared to Blue Buffalo may have more additives and things into it than a Blue Buffalo would. But not everybody can afford Blue Buffalo, so there have to be other forms in there that allow people to basically provide a food that is basic. I work, one of the other things I do is the pet pantry of Lancaster County, where we provide food to animals, and I'll tell you what we do. We mix all of that food together, all the dog foods together to give out to people. So when we do that, we know that all of the foods that we're mixing together are AAFCO approved food, so we're not shortchanging a dog or a cat in any way. The ingredients are still there. So that's just something to be kind of look at when you're looking at that. But, if you're really looking for a high quality thing, read your label. I mean, the labels are there for a reason. It's the same thing in human food, just read the labels. And again, if byproducts or water are the first ingredient listed, it's not as good as one that lists actual meat first. Then you kind of get into what we call our specialty or prescription diets. And these are basically designed to meet the needs. You can only get them from a veterinarian or a script from a veterinarian. And their ingredients have been altered, or their makeup has been altered to meet a specific disease condition that the animal is suffering from. So the common ones we do see are kidney diets, especially for cats that are older. Their protein content is going to be much less. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into why that is, but their protein contents are going to be less. Liver disease, they might have a little bit less fat content. Diabetes, their carbohydrate content, the way they're made out, is going to be made with what we call complex carbohydrates, which are going to take a longer time to break down over time to provide a more steady release of sugar as compared to simple sugars, which would cause spikes all over the place in your dog's glucose. It's the same thing in humans, where they recommend eating foods, if you're a diabetic, that are made of complex sugars instead of simple sugars. So if you constantly eat donuts or something like that, your blood sugar is going to go all over the place. But if you eat these things that are more complex, it's broken down more evenly over time, your body adjusts to it a lot better. Cancer, thyroid, there are diets that are specifically designed for them. Obesity, there are actually foods out there that are prescription diets that are nutritionally complete, but are designed to be very low calories. So this way, your dog actually, or cat, starts to burn some of the calories it has in its body instead of using the food as a sole energy source. And then finally, normally we see this more in cats than dogs, but urinary tract issues, we can adjust the acidity of the food or the mineral content to prevent stones and crystals and things like that from forming. So, question number 4, what is the one vital ingredient that all cats must have? So, how many people say chicken? How many people say taurine, which is a amino acid? How many people say murine? How many people say cysteine, which is another amino acid? And how many people say folic acid? And most of you, I'm sure, just don't know, which is fine. The answer actually is taurine. Taurine is a substance found in meat products that, and obviously cats are an all-carnivore diet, and if they don't have it, it leads to a condition which is called dilated cardiomyopathy. And they found this out only a couple of decades ago, which is why all cat foods now specifically have to have taurine as an additive for them to be approved. And so what dilated cardiomyopathy is basically this. It's where the heart gets very big and kind of globoid shaped because the muscle starts to thin out. I'll show that in another picture in a second. But what you have here, this is what a normal cat heart looks like. And this is what a cat's heart that's affected with dilated cardiomyopathy looks like. So it's much bigger, much more expanded. There's a lot of problems going on there. So to give you an example kind of in a picture form, this is a normal heart. What happens here is the muscle basically breaks down, and there's not enough taurine to supply that muscle building capacity. So the heart basically becomes a sac, like a kind of a very thin-walled sac, and it just cannot pump blood like it normally does, so these cats go into heart failure. So we're going to talk about some digestive system disorders, and the first is going to be what we call bloat. And the actual name for this, again, is gastric dilation and volvulus. Dilation basically just means to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and volvulus just means to twist. So what happens in these guys, which we'll get to in a second, is a life-threatening condition that has to be taken care of by your vet. It's more common in what we call the deep-chested dogs, so the Great Danes, Mastiffs, Dobermans, Rotties, Labs, but it does happen in smaller dogs too, and people forget that. Beagles, Bassets, Dachshunds, they can all be classic littler dogs that can develop bloat, and it is, like I said, a very life-threatening condition. So here's what happens in bloat.